Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to Guns N' Roses Central. And today I want to talk about the St. Louis riot that happened in 1991 on the Use Your Illusion tour. Now, I've already done a couple videos about the St. Louis riot. I did one documentary that's 45 minutes long or so. I've put the link down below if you guys want to go check it out. And I did one video all about the guy that Axl attacked named Stump. So in today's video, I want to talk about the stuff that you probably never heard or never read about in the newspapers. And what I want to talk about is how much did Axl actually pay Stump? How did Axl upset the lawyers during his deposition? What did Axl ask for on his tour rider specifically for St. Louis? And did you know Axl entertained diners at a local restaurant in St. Louis during his trial? So that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So the story really starts 2 years after the riot, and that's in May of '93. Now, about half a dozen St. Louis lawyers descended upon Los Angeles to question Axl Rose about his role in the Riverport riot 2 years prior. But what they weren't expecting is that they'd be stood up for 6 days, and when Axl did eventually show up, he had a message for the lawyers. So the heavy metal star wore a t-shirt that said "St. Louis sucks" during his questioning by these St. Louis lawyers. Now, the lawyer for the fan that was involved in the lawsuit against Axl was a guy named Stump. And he's really the center of attention for a lot of the riot and what happened in St. Louis. He was the one taking photos of the band during the show. And his lawyer was named Mark Bronson. And he said even though Axl was wearing a St. Louis sucks shirt during his questioning of Rose, he said that Axl was surprisingly restrained, reasonable, and not obnoxious. And he answered the questions, and I have nothing to criticize. Now, at the end of the day, the lawsuit that involved Axl and Stump really came down to whether Axl landed on the fan named Stump during the show. So during the show, Axl claimed he didn't land on Stump, while Stump claims he did and caused injury to him in addition to punches he received. Now, Stump, the initial target of Rose's anger, suffered a permanent back injury, including a bulging disc when he was jammed against a concrete chair by the rock star, and hearing damage from being struck in the head by Rose. Now, during the deposition, Axl even cracked some jokes. The leader of the Guns N' Roses band told jurors that he came up short in his running leap into the crowd. Axl was quoted as saying, "When I watched the video, I thought, white man can't jump," he said. "I didn't get very far out there." Rose drew laughter from the courtroom spectators when he described how he interrupted the song Rocket Queen with a head-first belly smacker off the stage at the Riverport Amphitheater. Now, Stump claims that he can no longer carry heavy items and wears a back brace when he rides his motorcycle. And Axl's lawyer argued that Stump's back problems likely resulted from weightlifting, riding a motorcycle, and performing heavy labor. And even during the trial, they had a hearing specialist come in and testify that 4 months after the Riverport riot, Stump did have some hearing loss. However, Axl's legal team had their own doctor come in and testify that Stump appeared to have no lingering back trouble that could be laid to being flattened by singer Axl Rose. So Dr. Edwin Carter, an orthopedist at St. John's Mercy Medical Center, I basically told jurors that the slight bulge in one of Stump's spinal discs was likely a degenerative phenomenon resulting from an arthritic condition. But Rose's attorneys also said that Stump is a frequent concert goer, he shoots shotguns, and once had a firecracker go off near his right ear. And those kinds of things could have been responsible for Stump's hearing loss, not Axl Rose. So during the St. Louis riot, or during that time in 1991, what did Stump do for a living? So he was part of a St. Louis biker gang, but he was also, he had a blue-collar job. So a guy named Thomas Dohak, he was the head of the Dohak Air Conditioning and Heating Company, also testified at the trial, and he said he had to fire Stump as a truck driver and a laborer because Stump was unable to say when he could return to work after his back injury. Now, following Stump's firing from that job, he would end up finding a job as a forklift driver at a distillery. And even though Dohak said he had to fire Stump, he did say that he was a good employee with no sign of back trouble before his encounter with Rose at the Riverport Amphitheater. So something that a lot of fans may not know is that not only was Axl sued, but the band itself, Guns N' Roses, was sued, in addition to Axl's corporate entity, Mogobo Incorporated, and the band's record label Geffen Records were also being sued in St. Louis and St. Louis County Circuit Courts for injuries to security guards and spectators. And if that wasn't heavy enough, Rose was also being sued for damage to the Riverport Amphitheater in Maryland Heights, and at the peak of that riot, even the grass was set on fire. So authorities estimated that around 3,000 fans took part in the riot, which left 65 people injured, including 25 police officers. Now, those lawsuits were independent of the criminal case against Rose, and Axl was convicted in November of '92 of 4 counts of misdemeanor assault and 1 count of property damage, and the rock singer was given 2 years on probation in order to pay $50,000 in fines. Now, Axl's lawyer claimed that Rose had been worried about the security at the amphitheater, and the singer tried to get the camera because some magazines had run false stories about the band using photos taken at the concerts. And when Axl plunged off the stage, Rose claims he hit an empty chair, not Stump. And the rocker grabbed Stump by the back of the shirt as he was trying to scurry away on his hands and knees, Axl's lawyer claimed. Now, Stump's suit is a simple case between 2 healthy young men falling to the ground, claims Rose's lawyer. Now, in addition to Stump suing the band, there was also some spectators and security guards who sued Axl as well. One fan claimed their medical bills were in excess of $3,900 and claims his face was cut by the thrown bottle, and he feels basically people constantly stare at his facial scar. There was another plaintiff who was an off-duty security guard at the concert who then joined his co-workers when the riot started. That person claimed that their medical bills were over $2,400, and he went on to say, "I still feel traumatized when I see videos and books about Guns N' Roses. When they almost killed me," he said. "I have to leave the room to calm down when Guns N' Roses songs come on the radio." So in addition to poor security and violations of the no-camera ban, Rose claimed that promoters were freely selling alcohol to minors, an allegation that promoters deny. So according to Rose, the band saw very young people drinking and others who seemed intoxicated. And during the concert, Rose also claimed that bottles were thrown at Duff McKagan twice and Izzy once. And Rose's attorney argued that Axl and the band had left the amphitheater before the riot broke out, and Rose never hurled a bottle at any of the spectators or encouraged such conduct. Now, to the allegations that Rose's departure caused the riot, Axl's lawyer claimed that we do not know how any termination of the performance breached any duty to anyone. And one of the other allegations is that Axl incited a riot, but Rose's lawyer, of course, rejected that claim. Accused alongside with Rose were the record label Geffen, as well as David Geffen. So they were accused with ratifying the group's outrageous behavior. Now, according to one of the plaintiffs, they said that Geffen knew the band's antisocial episodes would enhance their image as gurus of rebellion and increase current ticket sales, the suit alleges. They also claim that Geffen aided and abetted the antisocial image and reaped huge profits therefrom. Now, Geffen lawyers say no duty existed on the part of Geffen Records Incorporated to exert any moderating influence on Guns N' Roses. But the lawyers for the plaintiffs seem to have a different viewpoint. They said that Geffen's defenses were absurd. They said you can't come in here, charge $20 to $25 a seat, start a fight, blame security, and not be responsible yourself. That is not the law in any civilized state that I'm aware of. And basically, they said they knew what to expect. It happened before. There had been riots at other concerts where Guns N' Roses failed to finish a show. To say we were coming to St. Louis, cause a riot, and walk away from it is pretty blatant affront. Now, even at the trial, the police were expecting throngs of fans to show up, and they had to devise a plan to get Axl Rose safely into and out of the courthouse. However, when the trial actually came, not many fans showed up to it, and no groupies rushed Rose, even though his band Guns N' Roses was world famous at the time. And there really weren't any crowds gathered at his hotel. Only a few people, maybe 24 at most, actually arrived at the courtroom to peek at Axl Rose. So as a result still, Axl got special treatment. So private guards were allowed to hustle Rose into the basement door, sheriff officials said. To get to the courtroom, Rose and his managers were allowed to use an elevator, usually reserved for judges. And husky guards with walkie-talkies walked ahead to make sure all was clear. 2 Lincolns were parked at different doors. One was for Rose, and the other was for a decoy to throw off fans. Officials said that Rose had stayed at the Hotel Majestic, a block from the courthouse. Now, some employees were not happy with the way Rose was treated. One employee in an interview said, "We couldn't get our prisoners here for court appearances because all the deputies were involved with Axl Rose." Another employee said they're just catering to him, referring to Rose. So Rose looked straight ahead as he walked from the courthouse to the car, speaking to no one. And during a break near the start of the trial on Thursday, he took a moment to greet a daughter of one of his lawyers, Alan S. Boston. The daughter, Beth Boston, who was 16, and a friend who was also 16, cut school to meet the rock star. Rose smiled and shook their hands. They smiled back and then scurried away, grinning at each other. And in another article, lunchtime diners on the second floor of Magruder's Pub and Grub on Pine Street were treated to several classic piano selections on Monday from none other than Axl Rose himself. So a bevy of lawyers and staff members from the Public Defender's Office were there to celebrate boss Kevin Curran's natal day, when the infamous rocker appeared surrounded by bodyguards and lawyers. While waiting for his food, Rose got up and played the piano near his table. So you guys may be wondering, like, how much did Axl get sued for, and how much did he end up settling for? So he was sued for about $2.5 million by Stump, but at the end of the day, it was reported that he paid about $160,000 to Stump and gave him an autograph, but the autograph was not part of the original settlement. Yeah, here's a story that Stump tells in a documentary about the riot.
And they both reached an agreement between...
The jury came out and asked for some more evidence to look at, and then they come up to the sum of numbers were about where we was all in the same ballpark. And we wound up settling the case after the jury was in deliberation for a couple hours.
And at the close to the last minute or something, it was accepted, and that would have to be enforced, and so we're fine about it.
I'm just happy with the outcome, and
basically I asked my lawyer, I said, is this done and over with now? And he said, yeah. I said, okay. And I grabbed my book up with my photos of him, and he's like, where are you going? I said, I'm going over to get my autograph, because he owed me an autograph. And he's like, no. And I go, well, why not? What's he going to do? He goes, who knows? I said, well, we'll find out in a minute. And I walked over to the table, and all the news media people was around him. And I just rudely cut through, you know, excuse me, and set my book down in front of him, and I said, I think you should autograph this picture. And he just looked at me like, are you crazy? You know, dude, it's people like me that buy your albums and come to your shows to put you where you're at. I think you got a little bit away from where you came from. And I said, I'm not a bootlegger. I said, this picture stays in my collection, and I want it autographed. And he looks up at me, and then I had him thinking, and all the media is like, this is going to be great. You know, they're all cameras rolling. He's going to sock him or he's going to sign it. Yeah, so they finally, he looks up at me and says, do you want me to put Billy or Stump? I said, whatever you're comfortable with.
And as part of the St. Louis riot lawsuit that happened, it even came out in the court documents what the band's requirements were for their dressing room, specifically for St. Louis. So according to the court documents, the band insisted upon 2 cases of Budweiser, 12 Bud Lights, 2/5 each of whiskey and vodka, an assortment of soda and mineral water, carrot juice, ice cream, nachos, nuts, a fruit basket, and a carton of cigarettes. The band members also demanded an assortment of magazines, preferably car, truck, trader magazines, and adult assortment including Penthouse and Playboy. And listed as very important for Rose himself were 2.5 gallons of hot water, large jars of easy serve Subi honey, and 5 lemons. In addition to that, he also insisted upon 2 bottles of Dom Perignon champagne, chilled, but required all beverages to be served in 16-ounce solo cups only. And the rock star also required angel hair pasta, pasta primavera, fettuccine alfredo, a deli tray, and a gourmet cheese tray. Rose also specifically specified Hellmann's mayo and fresh Wonder Bread white. And that concludes today's video, guys. I hope you guys learned some stuff about the St. Louis riot and the trial that maybe you guys hadn't heard before. Let me know in the comment section. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Yeah!